Davis Allen earlier, it seemed like for a while this season, they were making incremental steps each week, and the trajectory was up, and then at some point it started to maybe take some steps back. I'm curious what your explanation is for it overall, and I guess that includes the passing game, of course.
Yeah. It's just like anything else in a season. You play every week, and you go to practice every week, and you got a plan, but at the end of the day, you got to go execute it on game day. And we've done a pretty good job of being consistent and having the confidence to go execute the plans on game day, regardless of the position that you're talking about. And, right now we're just in a rut, and we got to find a way to get out of it, and that's our job as coaches. And it's also the job of the players to go and find a way to get out of it with our help. But it's not a situation where we've struggled all year. It's like you said, we've seen some good progress, and we've seen confidence that we've needed coming out of the off season. We've hit a little rut here in the last 2 weeks, and we got to find a way to get out of it.
Any specific reason why you think you guys have not been able to produce any of the explosives in the passing game the last few games?
Yeah, I think it's a situation where especially when you're dealing in the passing game, you have a couple balls that don't go your way, you have a couple of routes that don't go your way, and then next thing you know, that kind of starts building up. It's like basketball. A shooter gets hot and they get in the zone and they start rolling with it, and then next thing you know, they get cold. They go really cold. So there's situations across the board. It's not from a standpoint of the receivers or the tight ends or even just the quarterbacks. Sometimes you got the perfect look, you got the perfect call, you got everything exactly where you need it, and you get a little bit of pressure. So it's just a combination of things. And like I said, there's no panic on our end. There's no panic in our players. There's no panic with the coaches. We just got to keep working and find a way to get out of this rut, and that's what we're going to go back to work doing today at practice.
Coach Streeter said that there were some RPOs called where DJ probably should have kept it, run with it, handed it off, done something, and he winds up throwing it. There are times that you can see he probably hands it off, should have kept it.
Yeah.
Is that we've talked to him enough to know he probably knows what he's seeing. Is that a confidence issue?
I think some of it is because you get in a situation where, and DJ is the type of kid, he doesn't want to let people down. He puts a lot more pressure on himself because of that. So I think in some of those situations, he's looking for the perfect look. He's looking for the perfect read. He's looking for the perfect throw, the perfect play. And that just doesn't exist in football. There's too much stuff going on offensively that he doesn't control, that coaches don't control, and there's too much stuff going on defensively that nobody controls on the field. So yeah, at times, especially Saturday night, there was a couple times where it's like you come to the sideline, it's like, what'd you see? And it's like, man, I should have done this. And it's like, yeah, well, go with what you see, go with what you feel, go with what you practice. But it wasn't a majority of the times that you had those conversations. But yeah, there was a couple times where you're like, hey, you might could have spit that out, out the back door on the RPO, or maybe you should have kept that one. What'd you see to make? And I'll be honest with you, when a lot of times what we see is not what he sees on the field, and when you go back and watch the tape, it's like, man, I'm glad I didn't tell him to do that because he was right, and vice versa. There's a couple times where the defensive end's kind of in that gray area. Do I pull it? Do I keep it? Do I pull it? Do I throw it? And in those situations, you look back at the tape, in the game, you're like, man, this was wide open. But then you go back and you look at the tape, and you're like, I'm kind of glad he gave it right there. I'm kind of glad he pulled it. So what we have to do is, just like I said, go back to where, there's a confidence level there in, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. Make full speed decisions. We'll roll with the punches. And that's where we got to get him back to. That's where we got to get our entire offense back to. Because like I said, it's not a situation where we haven't seen the positives out of this offense this year. We just got to get back to playing more confident.
Coach, when you said that you guys really need to get K some more reps, get, as he
Yeah.
put it, get him ready. Not trying to make a quarterback controversy or anything.
Right.
But, you know, would you like to see him actually, instead of just 2 plays
Yeah.
in the situation or 3 plays here,
Yeah.
maybe get him some actual, you know, work with the ones and do that during the week and get him out in a game and see him for 10, 12, 14 plays?
Yeah. You know, I got confidence. Let me start with, I got confidence in DJ running our offense, and I got confidence in Cade running our offense. And DJ's a great football player, and Cade's going to be a great football player. It takes time, and we all know that, especially in this sport where development is key. But yeah, you know, you'd like to see maybe Cade get in there and take a few more snaps and just kind of give you a change up. And then the flip side of it is sometimes when you're the starting tight end, or sometimes when you're the starting wide receiver, you know, sometimes it's, hey, come over here and watch it for a second or two and see it the way we're seeing it.
Sure.
And when you got a guy like Cade, you can do that with DJ. But, you know, both those guys have strengths, they have weaknesses, and it's our job to make sure that we're putting the best person out there to give us a chance to be successful on that drive, be successful, you know, offensively, and then find a way to play complementary football, offense, defense, and special teams, and just not screw it up. And a lot of times, I mean, you know, we've done that this year. You know, I know everybody's upset, but we're 8-1. I mean, we're not 5-3. We're not 4-4. All right, let me take my Clemson coaching hat off and put my Clemson fan hat on. How many of y'all been here for? Don's been here for a long time, and guess what? I've sat here and watched this press conference when it was 3-8. I've watched this press conference when it's 6-5. I've watched this press conference when the Tangerine Bowl, we're dying to go play in the Tangerine Bowl. No offense to the Tangerine Bowl. You know, no offense to the Humanitarian Bowl, but we get a berth to the Humanitarian Bowl, and we're like, man, this is awesome, you know? So, like, we got to keep things into perspective, too. I'm upset with losing. I hate to lose. I don't care what I got on my chest. I hate to lose. But at the same time, like, we're 8-1. We went to a Notre Dame team that, guess what? They got football coaches too. And guess what? They got a lot of pride too. And we played in a tough situation, tough stadium, and we got beat. But we're going to go back to work. Because if we had got back on the plane in South Bend, and let's say we scored 50 points, and everybody's happy-go-lucky over the offense, and wow, we're back, we're still going to walk in the building the same way we walked in the building yesterday and go, what do we got to go fix? Because that's what we do. So, you know, good, bad, or ugly, we always walk in here ready to fix things on Sunday, and then we turn around and we go to practice on Monday, and we start a brand new week because the biggest game of the year is this week. It's like that every week. So, you know, I'm not going to get on the negative train. I'm not going to get caught up in the narrative, and our players aren't either. And that's our job as coaches too, to make sure our players understand the big picture. And, you know, I've been here for 7 years, and I've walked in this building on a Sunday after a devastating loss to Pittsburgh, and the season's over, just to turn around and go win a national championship about a month and a half later. I've walked in this building with a devastating loss to Syracuse, and it's over, just to go to the playoff 2 months later. So, you know, nowhere in our building does it say we have to have the #1 rated offense in the country. That's not a goal. Nowhere in the building does it say we have to go undefeated. It's not a goal. And when I walked back in the building on Sunday, all our goals were still right in front of us. Everything is still right in front of us. And that's my mindset. And when I walk out of that tight end room today, that's going to be the mindset of the tight ends. And they already know it's mindset because they heard that from me first thing Sunday morning when I woke up. We're just going back to work. And that's what we got to do offensively. We're in a rut. Ain't nobody sitting here trying to, you know, disagree with that. We've got to play better. We've got to coach better. We've got to put kids in better situations and account for everything that comes with that. But all we can do is go back to work and make sure that they're confident in what we're doing, and I know they are.
Now let me inside your head for a second. You said
Yeah.
you told them that. Did you get up and send them a text? Did you call them to see them?
Well, crazy enough, you know, we got back in about 4 o'clock in the morning, and a few hours later, the sun came up. Now, it was a little cloudy, all right, because there's a little bit of rain dropping. And there for a minute, I thought maybe it wasn't going to come up, but it did. And when it came up, I got my butt up and went to church. And the preacher still preached. That was crazy because I was actually worried he wasn't going to preach, all right, being down on the boys, all right. But he preached, and his sermon was on static. And it was about static, and the static is seasons of a lot of noise. And it's where a lot of outside noise comes in and tries to affect your season and what the truth is, all right, which I thought was very ironic to the situation we were in, right, still in. So, yeah, I mean, after I got done with that, I sent a text out to the tight ends and just, told them that I loved them, told them that I was proud of them because, you can say what you want, but that entire offense kept fighting the entire time. And we finished on a high note. And that's something to be super positive about going into this week. And I wanted to make sure they understood that. And but then the flip side of it is we're not patting on the back telling them how great they are either. As an offense and as a tight end group, like they're accountable too for their play. Just like I'm accountable for my coaching and they're accountable for their play. So when they come in today, I just want to make sure they know, hey, we got everything in front of us that we have said from day one. But we got to go back to work. We got to get better. We got to treat the Monday like we treated the Monday after we beat NC State and Wake Forest, who was ranked at that time. We're going to go fix some things that were wrong in the game. And then from there, we're not going to let this game beat us twice. And that's the mindset that we had to have. And they all responded. I love, Brenning Stewart's just growing before my eyes, and I love that about him. He's still a young guy, and, he's growing so much, and his response was, Coach, this just makes the story even better. And that's his response. And that just shows you, what the culture of our program does for our kids. And at the same time, they're not listening to the static. They're just focused on what we got to do to go get better. And then on Saturday, we got to go do it. And I can't wait to go do it. I wish tomorrow was Saturday. I can't wait to go do it. We're not going to backdoor our way into the ACC championship. We're going to go bust the door open Saturday to this ACC championship. And that's our mindset, and that's our goal, and that's what we're going to go do.
Is the task right now for this offense very similar to what the task was all offseason, generating confidence, less perfect play?
Yeah, I think we got to get back to that. We played kind of free there for a while, and I don't know what's happened to kind of trigger it back to where, you can just tell we're kind of hesitant. And I'm not just talking about quarterback. I'm talking about a lot of areas. We're just kind of hesitant and man, just let it loose. Just run this route the way you run it every day in practice. And then we get out there, and it's not really a lot what the defense is doing. Now, at the time, there is some things that the defense is doing. There were some things that Notre Dame did different, obviously, than they did in film. Again, they got football coaches just like we got. But the weather kind of played – I think the weather kind of played into – because when you go and you watch – if you watch any of the Ohio State-Northwestern game, the weather played into, obviously, some offensive and defensive changes in regards to probably game planning. And then I think the same thing was probably a little bit the case there to where some of the stuff that they kind of done all season defensively. There were a couple tweaks that that they hadn't showed all year, and I think some of that was just due to the fact of the weather and that type of deal. And then you turn it over to their offensive side, and they grinded it out, and that was again that was great for them and kind of the conditions we were in, and we just gotta find a way to. You come to practice and the practice is just been different. Like our practices don't look the same as the games in the last 2 weeks. And there for a while, the practices were just parlaying right over to Saturday's games. And that's just where we got to get to. And again, I think it's just a lack of confidence. We've and not just with the quarterback, with across the board. And we just got to get that back and get back to being, consistent. We've scored opening drive. We've scored, I think, 6 out of 8 drives. 6 out of 8, opening drives of the game. We've gone down and scored, and we just got to get back to that, to where we're getting off the bus, we're rolling, and then from that point, everybody starts feeding off everybody, and that's the thing that really, the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me as a team on Saturday was we never could get the momentum back. when the defense has kind of been down at times, the offense has picked them up. When the offense has been down at times, the defense has picked them up, and our special teams has just been really consistent. And on Saturday, we get the block punt, it goes for a touchdown, and at some point you're like, all right, we're going to get that momentum back. Defensively, we're going to get it back offensively, and then we'll start feeding off each other. And that was just for the first time all year that never happened. And we never got the spark that we needed to kind of change that momentum. Because I truly feel like if we could have, then we're back to that situation that we've been in before, other years, this year. And then at that point, we're playing football. And we just never could get over that hump.
But Kyle, what would you say the identity of this offense is at this point?
It's a good question. I mean, if you I think there's different identities at different parts of the season at this point. Right now, I think the identity for us right now is that, we're one play away from being great. We're one play away from being just average, and that's where we are right now. There's been a couple balls that they're thrown uncatchable. If they're thrown catchable, it's a different ball game. There's a couple balls that's been thrown very catchable, and they're not caught. It's a different ball game, and that comes from the receiver room and the tight end room. And then there's a couple plays where, we've handed it off to Shipley or Maffa, and we are one block away, and it looks like it's there, and we get a shoestring tackle based off of one block, And the same thing with Saturday. I mean, first play, we go 8-9 yards, We spit out a screen, we go 8-9 yards, and what do we do? Get it back for holding. And then we turn around and get a holding call 2 plays later. And that's just kind of where we've been the last 2 weeks. We've done an incredible job of protecting the football early in the year. So the narrative early in the year was, man, they're great in the turnover margin and protecting the football. The last 2 weeks, not been the case. And you look across college football in the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of ranked teams that have played really effective on offense and really efficient. And they've turned the ball over in the last 2 weeks, and they've got beat. And that's another, that's where we are right now. We can't throw the catchable balls that we need to throw. We can't catch the catchable balls that are being thrown. We're getting penalties when we got positive plays. We lived in 3rd and long this week. We've been great we're 5th in the country in red zone offense, which was a struggle last year. And we've been consistent in that all year in red zone offense. We're 5th in the country. And I think we're like 18th in the country in 3rd down efficiency. And we lived in 3rd and long all night Saturday night. And that's something that we haven't done this year. So I think depending on which part of the season you're looking at is kind of, to answer that question, is which part of the season right now, we're very average offense, very average. And we're average at all positions. But I will say this. We're very average in all positions right now, but we have greatness in all the positions too. And we are just one play away because we've already seen it. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, hey, we're one play away. Remember 3 years ago when we did it? Nah, let's go. I mean, did y'all come to Wake Forest? Everybody came to Wake Forest game? Okay. I mean, we were pretty good offensively that night. It wasn't too long ago. So, I mean, we have these pockets of greatness. We just got to put it back together. And again, we got to keep things into perspective too. And it's been a bad 2 nights. We've had 2 bad nights, and it just happens to be the last 2 games, and we'll get it turned.
How do you kind of marry that? Coach Sweeney says that you need to get DJ just to be able to turn it loose sometimes. Hey, don't be afraid to go make a play. But then you have what I guess was maybe an option route where he threw the pick 6 there. And
Yeah.
Somebody made a wrong read. You go, okay, so now I've made a mistake. How do you kind of say, hey, turn it loose, but still don't make mistakes?
Yeah, and it's tough, from a quarterback standpoint, and coaching quarterbacks. I've coached quarterbacks for a long time, and it's a really tough. Obviously, it's a tough position to play, and it's a tough position physically, but mentally, it's tougher than any position. So there's a fine line there where you're not in his head too much, and you're not predetermining how to throw balls and the reads that have to be made, because you can't do that at quarterback. You got to see what's happening live, and you got to see it post snap. But he's just got to, he's got to trust, and that's probably the biggest thing. He's got to trust himself. He's got to trust what he does at practice every day, because if he wasn't the guy, he wouldn't be playing. He wouldn't be at this level. He wouldn't be at Clemson. He wouldn't have gone to Notre Dame, 2 years ago and did what he did then. He can do it. He's just got to go. He's got to trust himself. He's got to trust his reads. He's got to trust his coaching. And like I said, he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest kids I've ever been around. And he's one of the hardest workers, if not the hardest worker I've ever been around. There's not one person in this building, there's not one player, there's not one coach that will say something negative on or off the field about DJ. But with that personality, he brings a lot of pressure to himself. And he's a perfectionist. And those type of things you got to find, like I said, it's a fine line. You got to find a way to kind of work through those things. But, I would just say trust, man. You got it. You got it. Just go do it. And he can, and he will. And we got to help him as coaches, I think at times you can't live in a fast-paced offense, as in running every play. Trust me, I love tempo, but you can't live every play like that. And for him, I think he does a little bit better when he is playing a little bit faster, because there's not as much thinking. Defense can't do as much. All right, so for us, maybe we play a little bit faster at times, and that's kind of what you saw at the end of the game there. The flip side of it is when there's much pressure on you at the end of the game, when you're just kind of out there tossing it around, and it's a blowout at that point, So, again, there's a fine line there. But, we can, as coaches at any position that we're at, including the quarterback position, we have to find a way to highlight their strengths and hide the weaknesses. And that's what we're working on every week in this building. And I think maybe, tweaking some things there and just saying, hey, play a little faster, play a little more free, and let's see what goes from there. But again, you can't just line up and do that every snap either. That's not football either. So we'll have to figure it out. But we got a good plan moving forward.
Is DJ running also integral to that sort of generating that looseness that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think we just, the last 2 weeks he hasn't ran as much, and again, it's not from a, we're calling the same plays that we've called all year in some capacity. It just hasn't worked out to where he's gotten loose the way he kind of has. And then there at the end, he did, and look what happens. He turned, it was a big play. But again, we just got to go back and make sure that, we're putting everybody in some of the times that we put the situation where, it's a quarterback run, there's still pass tags, attached to it. And they give you a wide open pass and you throw it out there, Like I said, there was a couple plays on Saturday where, he's probably going to end up running the football, but they left a wide open, tight end running a flat route. Well, take the tight end on the flat route. But then we get a holding call, or we get this, or, we just couldn't. The last 2 weeks, we just haven't been able to piece it all together. But, yeah, we got to get him going more in the run game. Shipley and Maffa and him, they're just good complements. All three of them are just really good complements to each other. So we'll get him going a little bit more in the run game, and that always, he's enjoyed running the football this year, and it's calmed him down a little bit, and then you turn around and you see some of the things that we can do in the RPO world when he's that threat too. So that's another piece of it. And like I said, we've gone back and, we obviously we study ourselves from the previous game, but we've gone back and looked at things earlier in the year and said, all right, why were we so successful here, or what has happened here? And so we're exploring some of that stuff and seeing where we can kind of piece those things back together. The other part of it is you get this part in the season too. I mean, we're in November, and you got a lot of film on you at this point, and there's a lot more for the defense to digest as they're preparing for you and kind of creating their plans. So you have to be, again, there's a fine line. You have to be ahead of the game on that, and you have to make plans for that. But if you're screwing your own players up with giving them too much to do or too much to digest mentally, that slows them down playing faster and playing more free, then you're really screwing yourself in that comparison too. So we have to be careful that we're not putting too much on them just because the defense has more stuff on us.
Any questions for Coach from Zoom?
Matt with ClemsonSports.com. You touched on it a little bit, but just the weather, how much did that impact the lack of shots downfield in the first half? And then one of those with a 4th and 4, I'm guessing that was probably not the first read, taking the deep pass to both.
Yeah, first part of the question, the weather, I mean, it was, it's the windiest game I've ever been associated with. I mean, heck, before we ever got to the stadium, the power was knocked out at the hotel due to the wind. And it was just, it was crazy when it comes to just from a wind standpoint. But, there was in pregame, even myself warming up with the tight ends, I mean, I like to think I got a really good, strong arm, I feel like I throw a great ball, but I was overthrowing the boys Saturday, and it was weird. But, I think there was a couple of them that might have got loose from him, or maybe you account for the wind too much just because of the situation you're in, but it didn't really change what we were going to do from a game plan standpoint. They might have changed a couple play calls just from which direction you were going and the wind was going. Obviously, Notre Dame didn't throw the ball as much as we had in our game plan, so it probably didn't affect their game plan as much. But for us, we made a couple tweaks. But, as for that play, yeah, I mean, Bo, on 4th and 4, it was we had a play call that we've executed 1,000 times in practice and executed a bunch on 3rd and 4th down in games already for the first down. And, that wasn't his first read. The first read ended up being covered up. The second read ended up being covered up, and your 3rd and 4th read were two, outside deeper shots on both of those calls there. So that's kind of explanation on that. But even with that, I mean, we're, that's got to be, going back. DJ's got to throw a catchable ball there and give Bo an opportunity, because anything can happen if you give him a chance there. You can get pass interference or you can get a big catch. And whether the wind took it or not, like, we got to throw a catchable ball there, especially on 4th down. And those are the plays here and there that when you look at the effectiveness of our offense here in the past 8 games, like, we've thrown those balls for completions, we've thrown those balls for pass interferences, because they're catchable. And then here in the last 2 weeks, we've probably thrown more uncatchable balls than we have catchable balls. So it's not like it's a schematic thing. It's not like we can't, he can't do it. He's just got to go out and take a little bit off of it. And we don't need a perfect ball there to run underneath and go score a touchdown. We need a catchable ball that we got an opportunity to get the first down on and move the chains. And like I said, that kind of goes back to sometimes DJ just tries to be, because he don't want to let people down, and he puts so much pressure on himself that now he wants to make that perfect throw. And he's better than that, and he's shown that, and he'll get better at that. But we got to coach it up and demand it.
Outside of Bo and Antonio at receiver right now, or I'm sorry, with Bo going down, outside of Antonio and then Gata at receiver right now, just who do you kind of look to as maybe that number 3 guy?
We got, Adams coming along, with him kind of being out with his injury. He slowly made it back, and, he's going to be he's a big-time playmaker for us in practice, and has gotten more reps, in a game, and he'll slowly get more reps there. Spector's a kind of a glue guy. He can go to any of the 3 positions and play any of those positions and be really consistent there. I think with Davis and Brenny, you got 2 guys there that can also plug and play. So I know just because they have tight end beside their name doesn't they don't necessarily get lumped into that receiver group. But when you get in these types of situations, it's about getting your best players on the field and getting your best players on the field surrounding your quarterback, especially when your quarterback's struggling a little bit. Giving him more playmakers out there at the same time. So we'll have to kind of figure out what we're going to do there from a standpoint of we know who our guys are, and I'm going to get in depth with it here. I figure Louisville's probably listening a little bit, but we'll have a plan with how we're going to carve up our personnel packages moving forward. But